which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on our agenda this evening is a presentation regarding our capital project. We have some guests here tonight.
Okay, we'll kick things off.
Okay.
Folks, can you hear me fine, or can you use the mic? Okay. All right, board and our visitors tonight. Tonight we're here to talk about our capital project that we're looking to kick off and bring to a vote to our voters in December. We have members from our architectural and engineering team, as well as our financial planning team. And in a minute after I cover this slide, I will be turning it over to our architect, Nick Signorelli here. We'll get into more of the nuts and bolts of the scope of the project. Then we have Karen Moon from Bernie P. Donegan, our financial planners, to discuss the finances of the capital project. So first and foremost, the first one, our facilities maintenance, we have physical assets, including our buildings, mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, that are valued at more than $75 million. And certainly this to protect, maintain, and provide for improvements to these assets is beneficial to the school district, and that's why we initiate capital projects. Basically, this capital project was born out of many items that have reached the end of their useful life. There's a lot of different things. The last project, one of the main things of that project was this auditorium. And 2 rooms next door to us, band and choir rooms were renovated as well. We don't have big ticket items or big highlighted type of pieces like this in this project. This project is looking into our things that we need to maintain our infrastructure so that we can continue to provide a safe and healthy learning environment. But another purpose of the capital project is certainly to maximize our financial resources, which Karen will get into in a little bit. But we received nearly 89% of state aid back on all eligible items in our capital project. And we try to make sure with the things that we do in the capital project, we do our very best working with our architects and engineers to make sure the work that we're doing does maximize our aid. There's some things that just aren't aidable, but the vast majority of the project would be covered by that 89%. And then prudent fiscal planning. In addition to capital projects generating building aid, which is where we get that 89% from the state for state aid, the financial impact of the project is part of the annual tax cap calculation, which will get discussed here in a little bit. Efforts are made to initiate new capital projects at a time when we have old debt falling off and you put some new debt on. And this helps keep a little bit more of a steady, and you'll see a slide later in the presentation, a much more steady perspective of what you can expect for your taxes over a long period of time, as opposed to seeing a big drop off and then we come with another capital project and then it spikes back up again. So our goal is to maintain a stable local share to prevent these substantial swings in the cost of the local taxpayer. So with no further ado, we will turn it over to what's included in the project.
Okay, what is in the project? So I'm trying to put it into sort of some categories. First category is site improvements. So at the stadium area, we have to replace the turf. It's due for replacement. And while we're doing that, we're also going to address some of the drainage underneath the carpet of the turf as well. There's some paving around kind of near the elementary school towards Sauquoit that we need to address. The track also needs to be resurfaced. And then a few other things at the middle school. So the tennis courts need to be repaired and resurfaced. And then providing a handicap accessible route down to the softball. There are a number of roofs in each one of the buildings that need to be addressed. So at the middle school, the entire middle school roof has reached its useful life, and that will be replaced. At the high school, this building, really it's kind of focused around the 1930s building, which is really this section of the structure. And then at the elementary school, a very small piece, bus garage, a good portion of it. As a matter of fact, about 90% of the bus garage. Flooring is another big theme, and I won't read every single item, but essentially classroom flooring and also corridor flooring specifically. At the middle school, predominantly down the lower level, and in the corridors, floor tiles are popping out. So we need to address all of the middle school, at least in many areas. The elementary school, we did do flooring replacement in the last capital project, but we are going to address the remainder of those areas in this capital project that we're proposing. So the capital upgrades, each building again has some ventilation improvements that we're going to address. The middle school specifically on the gymnasium side, and then the bus garage, really more of a heating and ventilating piece as well. So other upgrades or program elements that we need to do, you'll see in each one of the buildings, high school, middle school, and elementary school, a category that says masonry repointing. So the mortar in between the bricks and sometimes water gets in there. So we need to address that to maintain a dry envelope to the structure and do any repairs and replacement of bricks. And that's a common theme throughout those. Plumbing, some piping replacements are also a common theme in those three buildings. And then at the high school and the middle school, we're going to be addressing the locker rooms really in terms of providing a gender-neutral changing area in each one of those locker rooms. Really just kind of minor renovation in each one of those two buildings. Lastly, there is some elevator upgrades to the high school as well. That we need to, elevator and controls really, that we need to address. So let's talk about the project financials. So big picture, all the work is proposed to be $10,785,000. So on the construction side, or the actual, bricks and mortar piece of work, it's around $8.2 million. And then of course there's financing fees and testing and things like that. And that's more than the $2.5 million. So the total project about 10.785. And I'm going to turn it over to Karen. She's going to give you a sort of a more clear idea of how those questions work out.
Thank you, Nick. So basically what I'm going to discuss is the financial impact of the $10.7 million. And kind of reiterate what Ron stated at the beginning, part of looking at capital projects is our prudent financial planning and looking at basically where we are existing debt-wise, where there might be some drops, and see where a project we are looking to build in so that we can stay even as she goes. The first slide I'm going to go over with you is basically the numbers, and then from here I'll give you a little graph so you can see the picture really easy there. So basically, the district's current existing debt, the way we read this chart is we have their total principal in column A, and then their total interest in B, so that in column C we get your total debt service over the life of those bonds that are outstanding. Column D is the estimated building aid that the district is receiving back on those project costs with the pay bond. So overall, you're going to get, I hit a button.
Might be the black.
No, I hit a button. Oh, there we go. The numbers are still the same. So then when we get to column F, that is what we call the estimated net local share or the impact, the tax impact to the taxpayers. So as you can see, in the 21-22 year, the total debt service is about 3.1 million. The estimated building aid is almost, 3 million, 2.9 there. So that the estimated local share is a little over 200,000. In 22-23, it falls, the debt service falls down a little bit to 1.9 million, but the estimated building aid falls as well to to 1.7, so that the estimated local share is still around that 200,000. As you look at 23-24, as the district was working on this project and, like I said, currently financial planning it and with the costs and all that, that's where the district will get a drop in that total debt service. So that overall the A drops down, so that they're calling out that local share, that impact into the budget for the tax levy and the impact in, tax cap calculations would drop down to that $45,000, so that there's like a $163,000 change in all those appropriations. And basically, if a project wasn't planned at that point, it would stay that steady, and then you'd see in 2026 that it would drop again to 12. And potentially, if you brought a project in at that point, you would have to, as Ryan said, you're gonna go down and go up again. So what I like to do, and I love looking at pictures better than numbers, and I'm a numbers person, is basically this graph outlines the estimated local share that we just looked at in that column out, and it kind of shows you the picture. You want to stay steady as you go. You don't want to have a lot of ups and downs. You kind of want to keep things steady as you go. So the goal of prudent fiscal planning is to try to fit. I don't have a little thing on this, to fill in where that blue bar drops down in 2024. So basically, as we look at these financials for that $10.8 million to $7 million project, this slide outlines basically we're looking at your existing building debt in the blue boxes, columns C, D, and F. Columns G through L are the proposed project. So as we took those scope items and we looked at those scope items with the district and we looked at the ability, as Ryan said, the majority of the whole project is aidable. Coming back, we come up with some estimated building aid, and we come up with an estimated borrowing plan. And that's what columns G through L look like. So basically, for a $10,785,000 project, we would have total debt service equal about $16.1 million. The estimated building aid over the life of the project would be $12.4 million. We would be using a little bit of some debt service capitalized interest to offset that local share, so that the estimated net local share is a total of $3.1 million. So the project has an impact. But when you look at it with the existing debt relative to the current budget, we need to go to column M. So remember where we showed that drop in 23-24, as this project gets built to come in, we're actually going to be able to keep the district level at that little $200,000 total for several years, whereby in 2034, where we have that $38,000 drop over there, where the district might prudently want to plan another project to keep that level up as well. So when you take all these numbers and you put them together, this is the picture where we talked about trying to stay with that blue bar at that line. And that this project financially will do that for the district. So this project will have no additional taxes to the taxpayer. Back to project schedule.
Okay, project schedule. So, as I mentioned, there's a roofing component of the project, and that would be sent to the state this winter, actually this fall, and will be constructed or replaced next summer. The remainder of the work that I pointed out would be designed after the vote in the proposed vote of December, and submitted to the state for review, and then construction would start for that project in 2023. So essentially the project would be completed probably late 23, early 24. Any questions that we could also? Oh, and then the proposed capital project date is December 9th. Yeah. Yes.
I'm sorry, could we just mention the EPC that's being planned, that we can address that if you don't want to, but. Yeah, no worries, we'll hold that piece for back tonight as well.
Sure. So, as part of the capital project, you could also vote on a separate energy performance contract, which is basically going to take care of your lighting replacements throughout the entire district. So an energy performance contractor would come in, evaluate facilities, determine the size of the project. I think we're talking around $1 million. Replace the lighting, and then you would have a savings for, infinitum, I guess. But in your energy costs for all the lights that, again, that we haven't touched in the last renovation, but lights that would be like classroom lighting, corridor lighting, in each one of the facilities, Oscarog Elementary, Middle School, and
So that's included in this?
so that would be a separate, so 10.75 is the capital project, and then the energy performance contract would be, I think it's $1 million.
$1 million for the lighting. There are two companies that have been through. We saw a proposal a few meetings ago, the board did. And those responses are due Thursday. So after we get the responses, the board will see them. The thing that's the board will approve tonight is the public will need to vote on the energy performance contract to receive the enhanced state aid. So I wanted to make sure that was made part of this presentation. My apologies for not getting that into the presentation. But the board is hopefully going to approve language for December 9th. One would be to vote on a $10.785 million capital project, and part two would be to have the community approve the additional state aid of 10% for an energy performance contract. So the exact scope of the energy performance contract is going to be determined over the next month, let's say, with this Thursday being the timeline for them to submit proposals, and then the board can review that and make a determination on whether or not they want to go forward with an energy performance contract at all, and if they do, what the scope of that will be.
Charlie, is that repayment, how does that coincide with the chart we saw?
Yep, the savings from the energy performance contract, there has to be savings for it to be allowed, and it has to be paid back within 18 years. So it is separate from all of the numbers up there. Yes.
Once we level out these, the graph that levels out the expenditures, does that kind of limit the district from, building projects for quite a while, or how does that work?
It's a good question. So in those numbers, they're estimates, there's a borrowing estimate, right? So I will tell you that there are some, interest rates being used that hopefully are on the conservative side and can come in lower. And there's ways that as we see the actual rates come in, we can structure the debt in a certain way to keep you at a certain level and help to build, if you need to do a project sooner, to keep those levels where that is. So if everything was to happen exactly like that schedule showed and we structured that way, you wouldn't have the chance to build in another project to stay with no additional impact until that year I pointed out up there. So this is an estimate. This is not tied in until we actually issue the debt at that point.
Thank you.
Nick, how about the ventilation improvements? How does that affect air quality with,
John, you want to touch that?
Yeah, there's really two kinds of ventilation projects that we're looking at in the capital project. One is we're replacing rooftop equipment at several schools, I think. And because existing equipment is getting old, parts are getting hard to dropping off, and it's only a matter of time until it fails. We're going to replace it. Anything we replace it with is going to be with the current industry standard that focuses on reducing infection rates in classrooms. MERV 13 filters, increasing the outside air flow rate, increasing the turnover within the classrooms. The existing rooftop units really don't have the capacity to just put MERV 13 filters in them. because you'll really seriously degrade the performance, and if they're doing air conditioning, you probably break the compressor. In the classrooms themselves, where there are unit ventilators, and we have a number of unit ventilators slated for replacement in the capital project, manufacturers are now making unit ventilators that have the capability to include MERV 13 filters in them. So we would be selecting equipment that has that capability. Once again, we're going to look at maximizing how much outside air we can introduce at the unit ventilator, and maximize how much turnover we can do in the room as well. So any ventilation equipment that we're replacing this project we're doing everything we can to increase the occupant health and safety in the classroom.
And the units, I understand the units you're replacing, you're replacing with high quality. How about areas that are not being replaced? How will they be impacted?
There's no work slated for areas that things aren't being replaced. I mean, this whole project was focused on towards debt service level that is sustainable, and to add more equipment into that could be accomplished, but it would require additional funding in the project.
Yeah, I mean, in middle school, we did quite a bit of unit vent replacement in the last capital project, so I think, we addressed ventilation there, kind of more up to date, so to speak. I'd say that, we are addressing quite a few things at the high school and middle school, at the high school and the elementary school in terms of ventilation. So,
But I'm worried some rooms are not going to be improved. Is that
that's
true?
That's a true statement. I guess it's a matter of to what level do we bring those other rooms up to, better ventilation. And I guess I think to Ron's point is, we looked at the oldest pieces of equipment and the stuff that we can address within the budget that we have.
I think to your point, Tony, in the last project, a lot of these unit ventilators were replaced in the middle school. I think pretty much every classroom got updated ones at the time. And obviously technology changes, so, and that was pre-pandemic, but that is newer equipment. So by the end of this project, we should have relatively new equipment, or within the last probably 6 to 7 years have replaced it. And then as again, things you get on cycles is you don't do roofs all at the same time, and certainly I think to do the complete overhaul of all the ventilation, that might just consume the whole project in doing that as well. But I think by the end of this project, we will have updated within 6 to 7 years all of our ventilation systems.
Right. So I thought I saw 89.1%. Is that a state aid?
That's the current estimated one for 21-22.
Correct.
In my numbers, I use the more conservative one, which is a little lower, so potentially those aids would become higher.
Right. So with the energy performance contract, if it was approved by the community, we get an enhanced on that, right?
That would be the number, the 89.
Yes, it would be.
Oh, so the number is 89.
Yeah.
So would we get, the building project is 89 too? Well, okay.
Yeah, so if it's not, if you don't vote on there, just do the, you do it without getting voter approval, you get a lower aid rate.
Like 10% off.
Yeah,
Yes.
10%.
Okay. Thank you. And last question, I didn't see it in there, so I'm assuming that a scoreboard for the stadium field was not in the project, correct?
I don't think we got into specifics, but I know it's still kind of in there, yeah.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just had a quick question, just kind of new to the whole component. Repairs, any type of warranties, like the light bulbs, where does that money come from? Is that budgeted into this, or is that more money that we have to kind of budget every year for?
So that's a really good question. So I'm going to use lighting just because you brought it up. The energy performance contractor, which you should get a lot of clarity out of this from them, but typically within that 18-year period, they're gonna be replacing anything that goes wrong within, the fixture. Now, the LEDs are gonna last a lot longer than 18 years, but the point is, they're responsible for that. On the capital project side, say that, I don't know, let's talk about filters. I mean, you're gonna get filters turned over after construction's completed, brand new filters put in, for a unit vent or a rooftop unit. But then after that, yes, you eventually have to replace.
Yeah, like I have to replace mine at home. That's not, I understand.
I know Todd mentioned, and Ron has been here too, there's many other additional items included in the areas that you highlighted. How about the driveway going to Sulphur Springs Road? How are we gonna address that? I mean, it's been a nightmare with parking and no parking and fire lanes. How, have we come up with a plan on how we can address that, other
Yeah,
than
we
just
didn't,
paving it?
no, we didn't get into programming the parking and no parking, but it's something that we can, as we work through the project, we can discuss it with the administration and how they want to handle it. But I drove through it tonight and I see cones everywhere and cars, no parking signs with cars on each side of it. So
It becomes embarrassing after a while. It's out, we can't control it. I don't know how the administration controls it.
Yeah.
You see pylons there, you see signs up, and then you find 3 cars there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's included.
No, the paving of that roadway is included from the high school all the way up to Sulphur Springs. That's included. But as far as programming controls, that's something we'll have to discuss as we work our way through the project.
We're also limited on space up there too. There's some drainage on one side of the road.
In the
So, one aspect is, I understand people in the springtime will drive their car in. Well, the lines aren't set up for driving your car in, but they drive them in. So, to create that kind of space, obviously that's going to take away half of the road. To do that, you'd have to extend it further, taking it closer to the stadium, which then you have drainage issues over there that you're concerned with. So there's not a lot of room other than signage, which I know that doesn't always get followed. But that was a piece that didn't get done in the last project. That's, again, a lot of what this project is picking up where the last one left off, or things that might have been alternates in the last project that now become priority items in this project.
So
One more question, back to what Tony brought up about classroom environment and the newer filtration systems and stuff. Approximately what percentage of our classrooms have the newer stuff from the last 6 years was mentioned? How far along in that process of upgrading classroom environments have we gotten?
Yeah, I guess I don't know that off the top of my head, so I guess I could get back to Ron on that, like put an age to each one of the units in those rooms to say, these are era 1990 or something, and these are era 2015 or whatever. But yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head. But it's a good exercise to do, just so you're informed.
From a financial point of view, the classroom environment is pretty important part of learning.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to know the middle school's upgraded pretty much, so I would assume we're at 1/3 of the way or better. Okay.
Yeah, so we'll have to work on that together.
I think an inventory of ventilation equipment would probably be a good idea.
And do any of those have air conditioning, or is that a whole other thing?
The rooftop units that I mentioned have air conditioning. The unit ventilators in the classroom are really heating and ventilation only.
Okay, that would be interesting to see too.
Okay, yeah, we'll get back to you on that. It's gonna take some time to do an inventory at all. I mean, Steve Parker probably has that information up here.
I think, yeah. He could probably tell you the age of every single piece of mechanical equipment in the buildings.
Right.
And with the financing in 2023, 24, we're not taking that big hit there.
No, not based. getting the project approved, when you get it approved in December, and based on the timing of getting it submitted to the state and approvals, the time frame is working where you would get that issued in time and put it in your budget so that you won't take that hit.
If it's delayed, then we would take a hit for a year?
If we can't get approval in that time state period, you can't finance anything. So yes, you would take a hit.
Which is dangerous.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, as a team, we work together to make sure things get, and we talk regularly if we have to come up with some partial when to get approved and get things.
Has the flow in state ed stabilized, or is that still?
The approval rate has gone down quite a bit, so, I think on our last project, I want to say it took quite a while to get approved. Lately, the approval time is somewhere between 10 and 15 weeks, roughly, which is quite good, actually. Yeah, I think, if it stays that way, I don't know, but, it always kind of ebbs and flows. And then there's a lot of districts that are starting to do capital projects or proposed projects out to the public. So if they do get a bottleneck, yeah, that will extend.
Thank you.
I have a question. I'm just listening to what they kind of what takes credit over these? Like, why do you choose a four school or evaluation system? Why is title more important than adding the evaluation system?
Sure.
Like, why you choose a third more capital system over
Sure, that's a good question too. So, I'll preface it on my side and then maybe you guys can kind of talk on your end. So as architects and engineers, we look at the facilities on a health and safety code issues, and then any infrastructure items that, the longer you leave them, the worse they'll get, and then it'll get really expensive to fix. So, like for a roof, you can't let the roof leak, and then it's gonna start, affecting the roof structure, it's gonna finish. So, oh, no. So the roofs that we're replacing, the areas of the roofs that we're replacing are circa 1990. So they're maybe 95, something like that. So they're 25 years old. Yeah. So.
the warranty of the roof, it's still like, that's I don't know, I'm not a super person, I'm thinking as a homeowner, like, that's a long time to fix the roof on the part of the warranty. So what's taking part of it to afford something more important, we'll put an extra roof instead of fixing it a lot of times. So it's something like.
The problem with things like the roof is when the roof fails, it actually damages other things and makes the expense a lot greater. So you have to prioritize for failure. And roofs have a high priority because if you don't address them in a timely nature, they cost you a lot of money.
And anyway, that's kind of how we look at this and then propose, these are all the items that you need to address in the core structures that you own. Let's prioritize them and figure out, what are most crucial, because we're not going to do a project every year. We're going to do one every 5 to 10 or something like that. So, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think you covered it. The only other piece I guess I would add is we do enlist the assistance of our architects for building condition surveys, 5-year facility plans, all things that do have to be filed with state ed. So when we do a project, they look at some of these things and say, hey, have you been planning for this? Have you been watching these kinds of things? And that's why they mandate that schools go through this process of facilities planning and of a building conditions survey. And that's basically the birth of this project has really come out of that. Not all of them do. I mean, certainly we use portions of that. But we like this auditorium. We were like, we need to address it. We'd love to address it at some point to modernize it. And we did it along with other things that were reaching the end of their useful life, which is, like I said, the premise behind this project here. So that's where we kind of get some of the priority of what needs to get done. And then, as you work through this project, as we do the bidding process, how things might get reprioritized to say, well, we might want to make sure we can cover this enough, and some of this might have to be alternatives, that if we can do it, we'll do it in the project. If not, we want to make sure we do get A, B, and C done. Say that again? The community ends up voting on it. Yep. So what you're voting on is the scope of what you basically saw here tonight. Well, some of this has already been out in the newsletter that we covered. The next newsletter that comes out, I'll talk about it again. But there'll also be a postcard or just kind of a dedicated newsletter that speaks just to the project. A lot of the information you saw here tonight, and then that stuff would come home. And basically, what you vote on, that's the scope in which we have to stay within. We can't say, all right, we got the community to approve this. Now we're going to go and put a dome up on this. We can't do that. So we have to stay within the scope.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks.
Have a good night,
Have a
everybody.
good night. Thank you. Next, we'll move on for public to be heard. We do have one request to speak this evening. It is from Lisa Mason. Lisa? Hi, how are you? If you couldn't mind, if you want to just come down here to the microphone. How are you?
Good. The reason that I wanted to speak tonight is I've spoken to Ron many times. I have a grandson that's in 7th grade. He's been to Sauquoit his entire school career. He was diagnosed in August with cancer. I spoke to Mr. Madden on the day after he was diagnosed, which would be August 5th. I said, he obviously can't come back to school in the fall. What is the plan? We'll work it out. Numerous times from August 5th until the Wednesday before school started, I called. We're going to have a meeting. No answers. I only found out through the social worker at the cancer center, Levi wasn't coming back to Sauquoit. Okay, then I get a call from Tracy Pashini. No, we're enrolling him in City BOCES. What's that? Well, there's no more online. Really? Okay. So now we're kind of shocked. I actually called Mr. Reelock that day, and he knows that I was shocked. I'm like, why? So now we've got a 7th grader that's freshly diagnosed that Sauquoit has shot out the door. This City BOCES that I don't know where the communication gap was, whether Sauquoit felt that they were a great program or City BOCES lied to Sauquoit, I don't know. He never started school until September 18th was the very first time we were actually able to log on. He has an IEP that was never fulfilled, not for 1 second, until October 4th. He still has not got a math teacher, still does not have a social studies teacher. His resource teacher can't do math and can't do science. The whole system is a complete failure. In order to get help in math from a tutor, I forgot where across the state he's from, you have to sign up, and he'll see you anywhere between 4 o'clock and 9 p.m. That's absurd. If he has a slot available. He's failing. This is a kid that left here from online last year because he's also a transplant patient with a 97 average. The kid's bombing out. And the school wants no part of it. Tracy said the only thing she handles is special ed. Fine. There is no special ed most of the time. Who handles the rest? There's no tutors. He's home. I was told if we go for tutors, it could be 6 months. There goes his school year. What do we do in the fall next year? He's going to be a year behind. There's one student in this school that goes to City BOCES. One student is being left behind. It's not fair. Why can't one student be online like he was last year and at least be included? He's got cancer and he feels like no one cares. Now, one person from this school calls to say, how are you? How are you doing? We haven't heard from anyone unless I call to say, we can't get online, we can't do anything. Nothing. Tracy told us we can't talk about school to Gabriella Duell. Don't bother. I have an email on my phone. Don't bother. It's not her job. So what's Levi supposed to talk to her about? I don't get it. It's just not right. So what are we supposed to do? Let them continue to do City BOCES and fail. And I purposely today did his art. Purposely put in the wrong answer. So you know what he got for a grade? 100. He got 100. He's not going to fail. This is not fair. He's a smart kid. He may be a very sick kid, but he's a smart kid. And he's being left behind. His IEP is not being followed. Not at all. The resource teacher he has cannot do it. She's a nice lady. She can't do it. So what do we do? Any suggestions? I mean, the last time I talked to you, Mr. Reelock, you said, and I know you've been sick, you said, I get it, it's a failure. You know, I'll have to go to the board, you know, if this is the way it is, and explain to them, why is the school paying for him to go to City BOCES? And they're not, you know, living up to it. That is, I believe, exactly what you said to me. So I'm a taxpayer. I'm paying for him to go to City BOCES too.
Understood.
And they're not doing it. He played basketball. I have videotapes of him playing basketball for 3 solid weeks in my driveway, while every other student in this school was in class. That's my taxpayer dollars. Hard at work. It's not right.
Okay, we'll get back with you on it, Lisa. I don't have anything to offer you tonight.
I get that, Ron. I get it. But it's just, you know, I keep getting that same answer. We'll get back to you, we'll get back to you. And I get it, you were sick, and I'm sorry for that. But we're also going on the 3rd week of October. You know, it's just, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me.
Mr. Wheeler, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Lisa, what is City BOCES? I'm confused. Is that the BOCES program?
No,
It's out of Mexico, New York.
it's an online program. We're not doing remote instruction here for our students, but it's an online program that we get through, we cross-contract with the BOCES down in Syracuse
Okay.
through our BOCES. Because there's not a program here at our BOCES that does it, they farmed it out to a cross-contract. There's a remote academy for 6 at our BOCES, but not beyond that.
But you were told there was teachers there too, and.
Yeah, that's been the issue, they
Yeah,
weren't,
there's not teachers.
they weren't ready.
They posted for math to go find a career. Now, one of the teachers from Sauquoit, and I will not name her, posted on my Facebook when I posted a picture of this, we give that to seniors, that's home careers. When is a 12-year-old gonna go find a career? And that was posted for math. You know, there's gotta be a better answer. There's gotta be. You know, I mean, I'm not gonna sit there and watch him cry every day because this is ridiculous, because nobody cares about him. I mean, we shouldn't be dealing with school issues the way we are. I should be at the cancer center worried more about how his treatments are going and less about making sure that we can log on, making sure that someday he's gonna get a teacher, making sure that someday maybe he'll pass something. It's just ridiculous.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next, we'll move on to Board of Education Subcommittee reports.
No reports,
Okay. Next, we'll move on to Superintendent's report.
another no report.
Okay. All right, next we'll move on to old business. We have nothing under old business this evening. Next, we'll move on to new business. I'll read 8.1 to 8.11 as a consent agenda. If anyone has any questions or needs anything pulled for further discussion, please let me know. 8.1 is appointment of substitute teacher. 8.2 is appointment of substitute teacher. 8.3 is appointment of substitute bus driver. 8.4 is appointment of a substitute bus driver. 8.5 is appointment of substitute bus attendant. 8.6 is appointment of custodian. 8.7 is section 3 combining sports contract wrestling. 8.8 is section 3 combining sports contract ice hockey. 8.9 is approval of minutes of the September 28, 2021 meeting. 8.10 is resolution authorizing payment of bills approved by the claims auditor signed October 7, 2021. And 8.11 is committee on special education recommendations. Does anyone have any questions or would like anything pulled for further discussion? No, we're all good? Okay then. I'll need a motion to approve 8.1 to 8.11.
Motion.
That's Mike. I need a second, please.
So moved.
Todd? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next, we'll move on to item 9. So resolution. State Environmental Quality Review Act Capital Improvement Project. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we vote on item 9?
And this is for both, right? Or just?
No, I apologize. We're gonna vote on 9 and 10 separately.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is just for the capital?
This is just for the
Yeah.
capital project. Yes, I apologize. Okay then. I'll need a motion to approve item 9.
So moved.
Tony, I'll need a second, please.
Second.
Mike? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we'll move on to item 10, resolution, capital project vote. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we vote on item 10, the resolution?
So, yes, I do have a question.
Okay.
So, the question that was raised today, like the scope of duties, that's what we're approving to go to voters on December 9th?
approving $10,785,000.
Based on the scope of duties, yeah, we saw it, right? Okay. And so, when we had a presentation, I think, 2 meetings ago on this, when they came and presented kind of an outline of what they're looking for.
The energy performance contract?
No,
Or
these guys, the architects.
These guys were here.
So was it over the summer, and then that's when we kind of got the first look at it, and then from that point to this point, there's been discussion within the administration.
To some degree, but it's pretty much.
Following along what they did in the summer.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom. Any other questions? All right, then I'll just need a motion to approve item 10, resolution for capital project vote. Judy? I need a second, please.
Sure, second.
Tony? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next, we'll move on to miscellaneous topics.
I wanted to speak on something.
Alright.
There was a woman by the name of Lynn Weibel that had come at the last meeting and had some questions in regard to clubs.
Yeah.
She had spoken at length, Mr. Reelock was out. I just wanted to respond to her. I had reached out of curiosity because I have a daughter in the high school and I have a son in the middle school. So when she had spoke on that, it kind of made me perk up. So how does this work? I've spoken to both principals who were very receptive to my request, just asking how one recommends a club. Just bear with me for a minute. I'm assuming Lynn Weibel might be on YouTube watching, so I'm responding to her. My email was basically, if a student has an idea for a club or someone has an idea for a club, how does that work? Does it come to the board? Is there a teacher that supervises? Thank you for your time. And the response was pretty comprehensive. Principal Reed had said that he had surveyed some students last year about their extracurricular activities and what they should offer. And he had some responses in return from students. Some students had responded with some ideas, tech and STEM club and debate club. He had said he'll be talking to staff members about interests and supervising the clubs and things of that nature. And then would definitely support any additions to the club. Board of Education is approved for a new club, especially when a stipend or a fundraising needs to be involved. If there's a student interested in forming the club and an advisor is willing to participate, they would recommend a new club to Mr. Reelock. And it just had some basic information in regards to how the money would work to provide to the teacher. Same basic response from Principal Mann. But my point was, and I'm learning as well, a lot of times when there's a question, you really can get your answer from the lower level, not to call it lower level, but if you've gone to the teacher or to the principal, you would get a response. I'm grateful that she came because I learned something myself, but I do know that sometimes people want to be heard and they can come to the board and that's fantastic. But I have found, as a parent, not as a board member, I speak to these folks, I speak to them as a parent, that in my experience, everybody has been, I get a response within 24 hours and it's pretty comprehensive for the most part, and pretty straightforward. So I just wanted to respond to Lynn Weibel, wherever she is on the internet or possibly listening, that, we're listening. It's sometimes if you ask questions, usually you will get a response. So I appreciate your time for miscellaneous there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Do you have any other miscellaneous topics?
Brian, if you could maybe answer this question, based on the comment that we received tonight, pre-COVID, I'd like to go back to pre-COVID. If there was a student in that situation, what options or how did the school district handle a situation like that?
If somebody had a medical condition that kept them from attending school, they would get homebound instruction. For the secondary level, that's 2 hours of tutoring a day. For the elementary level, it's an hour a day. That's how we typically handle it. And so that was an option, and then there's also the option of this remote academy, which admittedly, it's been slow to take off, but I think, there was a promise of there's gonna be this program, and it's just, but I understand, I mean, we're all struggling to get staff, but maybe that shouldn't have been an option if they didn't really have it, but it's getting there, but it's been slow.
But there was an option in this case this year. It wasn't just that this was the only option. There was the homebound.
There's still the homebound instruction, but there's an option, yeah.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. Any other miscellaneous topics? Okay. I was just gonna ask you, yep. We do have an executive session this evening, right?
We do not.
Oh, okay. No executive session this evening. I will need, that, a motion to adjourn at, let's see here, 7:57.
So
Todd, I'll need a second, please.
Second.
Tony, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, well, have a nice night, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. 7:57. Yeah.